Thank you so much for the introductions. So my name is Dominic. I'm leading product management for the Matterport platform, which means how do we organize all of the data about the Matterport models and how we expose them to customers and developers using API and SDKs. And we are going to talk about that in a minute. Before I jump in, I would like to introduce two other Matterport team members who are going to assist me today, maybe starting with you, Guillermo.
Hello, I am the lead developer for the SDK, engineer here at Matterport.
Ethan?
Hi, I'm Ethan. I'm on the business development team here at Matterport. Happy to answer any questions that you guys have, and feel free to email me if you guys are looking to get set up with the Matterport developer account or need any access to any of our tools.
Awesome. So I'm going to share my screen and get started. And again, as Damon said a little earlier, so we are going with Guillermo, we are going to walk you through the technology that we have now and what can be used to build interesting apps on top of the Matterport platform. And I think it will take us maybe 40-45 minutes. And after, what we would like to do with the rest of the hour is to take questions and address those questions that will have been posted in the Slack channel in the meantime. Just want to check first, can you guys see my screen, Guillermo, Ethan? Yeah, okay, so I'm going to get started. And we are going to share this screen, this presentation in the Slack channel afterwards, so you can refer to it. There are tons of links that you can use on your own after that. So starting with a brief overview. So I'm not going to talk about Matterport at large because I'm assuming that most of you are familiar with our company and what we do. What I would like to focus on is our developer programs and the tool that we build for the developer communities. So in terms of framing the space, what we really are at Matterport is a platform company. What we are trying to build is a platform infrastructure so that customers can scan a space, get a 3D model, and all, which is very important, all of the data that are being inferred and created as part of our vision pipeline. And then what we want as a platform company is to expose those data, expose all of the models, and then let developers out there, creators, innovators think about how they can leverage those tools to create even more amazing experience for different verticals and different customers. And we develop those tools for a few reasons. So one is that, again, as I said, we want to address the first and third party developers out there to imagine new capabilities. And also we use the same tools, so the API, the SDK, we are going to talk of in a minute, internally to improve our own offerings. And so that's what I'm trying to simplify here in this chart. So here at the top, you can see that's us, Matterport, meaning Guillermo, myself, the Matterport team building these tools that are used internally for our internal platform. And so that's why we feel very confident about those tools, because that's what our platform uses to power the platform itself. But then we want to address the needs of our enterprise customers who very often have needs to automate some workflow. And again, using the API or the SDK, they can do that. And we want to address the needs of our ecosystems of developers, the growing ecosystems, and expose these new apps and services that are being built in what we refer to as our marketplace. It is a big program that we want to extend in the coming months. In terms of the tools that we have to offer to our developer community, we have mainly two. We have what we refer to as the API and the SDK. And so the API, I'm sure you guys are developers, so you know that, but very much to make sure that we are all on the same page. On the left side, we have our model API. And what this is used for is backend connections, data connections between our data stores, the Matterport data stores, and the customer systems. On the right side, what we refer to as the Showcase SDK. So Showcase is the name of our 3D player. Showcase, the 3D player, can be embedded in different pages out there to be able to render models in 3Ds. But what the Showcase SDK does is to bring another layer of programmatic capabilities that can be used by developers like yourselves to extend the experience on top of our 3D player. So two different goals sometimes, and I will talk of that a little later in this presentation. These two set of tools, the API and SDK, could or should be used together to achieve a certain goal, certain use case. But I just want to highlight those are different animals, and we are going to go deep in each of those in the next few slides. And I'm going to start with the API. I know this page again has a lot of text on it. I'm not going to cover everything. It's more of a reference. You can have it again if you want to read through it at your leisure based on the deck that we are going to post. But I just would like to highlight a few things about the API. Data exchange, we already covered that. You can get authentications using an API token. And again, later in that presentation, I have pointers for you to request these API tokens. It's based, the API tokens is tied to a specific account. So once you get your accounts and you get an API token for your account, you can use that tokens to access all of the data you need for all of the models in your account. You can send comments, you receive results, so you know, all of the good things. What you can do, well, something I want, to highlight about the API is that, again, as opposed to the SDK that we are going to talk more in a minute, the API is just for data. It's really to manage data. So there is no visualization that you can do using the API. You can retrieve data that then you can use to show on your site or in your experience, but you don't manage the visualizations using the API. That's something that Showcase and the Showcase SDK do. With the API, you can read and write data. And again, we are going to look at what you can do in a minute with it. And those data, because it's a direct connections to the Matterport data store, any read or more importantly, write that you do really impact directly the data for your models that you have in your account, very much like if you were changing those same data by coming to the matterport.com site. It's really the same thing. So it's persistent. There is no undo, just to be super clear. So be careful when you use it, because these are real data that you are writing and changing your models with it. So with the model API, you can do a few things. There is a whole set of things that you can do to manage, I would say, the life cycle of your models. So you can search for models based on any model details data that we have about it. So by address, by ID, name, whatever you enter during capture. You can also, everything is not documented on this slide, but you can get a list of all of your models. You can identify the new models. You can know the state of your models, so that if you want to perform, for example, some actions as soon as a model is ready, you can use the API essentially to query the state of a model. And then when the model is ready, you can start doing something with it. You can read any data tied to the models. I'm going to talk of that in a minute. You can update or write some of the data. I'm going to talk of that. And you can change the states. For people familiar with our platform, Matterport, it's very important to manage the state of a model. By default, when you create a new 3D model, the state is private, so it can only be seen on Matterport.com for people logged in on Matterport.com in your account. If you want other people to be able to see your model either on Matterport or on your own site, it needs to be set to public. And that's, again, those states, that's something that can be managed on the cloud UI, meaning on Matterport.com. You can do that there, but you can also automate these state changes via the API. And last, you can buy and download some of the value-added services that we offer to our models. On the right side, you can see a list. It's not exhaustive because we are changing and adding to the API on a monthly basis. But as of maybe a couple of months ago, this is what we were exposing in the API. Most of them, the data such as the photos or the panoramas or maybe the showcase URL, which is the URL you can use to embed the 3D player on your page, these are available as read-only. Some of them, and you can see here in the right columns, are also available as write. But if I had to summarize, I would say that everything which is more text or metadata, for example, name of a model, label, matter tag that we are going to talk of in a minute, those that are text-based, you can read and write them using the API. For everything which is binary, meaning images, OBJ, XYZ, those right now are only available for read. And as I said, there are a few, again, I don't know if that would be of interest to you, but there are a few value-added services that we expose on our site, but are also available via the API. For example, ordering a floor plans or ordering our TrueSketch products, which is a piece of a file that we provide for our insurance industry customers. Something I'll say, again, I already mentioned that, but I would like to get back to it quick. Showcase URL, so this guy here, is available via API, meaning once one of your models has processed, you can send an API query to get the showcase URL that you can embed on your site, so that's available. It's not the application itself. So if you want to use the showcase application, the 3D rendering, that's not something that comes via the API. You can get the URL, but the application itself would be downloaded to your site and embedded separately from the API. Now let's talk a little bit of the use case that can be enabled via the API. Something and that's the whole point, I think, of this hackathon. Something that we, Matterport, we are expecting is for developers like you to take it from there and really think innovatively and create your own use case. So this list that I have here is really more to spark ideas and to give an idea of what some of our existing customers are using these tools for. But my hope really is that you guys can take it from there and think on your own of new use cases. But again, just to spark the ideas, using purely the API, automating model prep use case, and I'm going to talk a little bit of that in a minute, super popular. So instead of coming to the cloud UI, meaning our site, and clicking a lot of buttons, changing some data, a lot of our customers are using the API to completely automate setting up their models. Then I already mentioned a little bit, searching for models, retrieving data, identifying new models, knowing when a new model is ready, very popular. Downloading some data of interest that you may want to use in your applications to do things. For example, the OBJ, all available via API, and that's something that is very popular with our customers. Ordering, as I said, value-added services instead of, again, coming to our sites. If you want to, for example, offer a UI where you show a lot of data about a property, maybe a project that you have in your space, and you want to let your customers be able to get the floor plan for the property directly from your sites. Again, you could have a button on your sites, the customer clicks on it, and it will send an API call to our systems to order that floor plan. So again, that's something that is pretty popular. And also we have some pretty advanced customers who are using our API to extend their own SDK offering. So they have an SDK, they offer already a lot of services, but they would like to be able to extend it to offer also Matterport capabilities. And so in that case, some of our partners are actually integrating the Matterport API into their own SDK so that they can extend and offer a larger package of capabilities to their customers. Just a screenshot, we have an interactive console where you can play with the API in the console itself. If you want to get a sense of what you can get before you invest in programming with the API itself. So that's all available to you. And just, I would like to show that use case. I was talking about preparing properties, for example, to be exposed, in this case, on a real estate site. And so I'm not going to read it, but at the bottom, you can see there are 6 or 7 key steps that today customers of ours would need to handle all manually, meaning they literally hire people to come to our site, click a lot of buttons, copying and pasting fields from their own system so that they can tie our models to their own system and so on. So until recently, it was all manually. With our API, they are able now to basically program and automate a lot of those steps. And so that saves a lot of time and money. So I'm not going to cover that in details, but again, for reference, you can look into this later. Another example, very high level, some of our partners who needs to access quite a lot of data about models to be able to assess the interest that they would have in a certain property. And so again, because all of the data, it's obvious, but because all of that data is available now via API, our partners can just integrate with the API. And for a certain model, they can just pull all of the data of interest and then they can feed that data into their own algorithm that they have on their side to, to process and get to whatever score that will reflect the interest that they have in that property. So in these examples, the partner we were working with was interested in the address, the information about the different rooms in a model, the number of floors, and so on, what you see here. And so again, all of that data is available via API. The one thing I would like to mention also is, I touched on it, but I just would like to come back to it. A lot of our customers are thinking initially of Matterport as a 3D model player, a 3D tour player, which is, I mean, we do that for sure. But again, one of the real values that Matterport is bringing in many verticals is a depth of data that we infer either using deterministic algorithms or AI-powered algorithms that we have as part of our vision pipeline to extract a lot of information. So again, I showed you in another slide a list of the data we expose, but I would invite you to explore this. So if you want to know the number of floors, as you can see here, if you want to know what rooms we have, we already provide segmentation of the rooms, which one are kitchen, bedroom, or what's not. And so on. So it's really up to you developers to take all of that data that we expose and be able to create even additional value based on that. So I'm going to skip this for a minute, and I would like to now talk a little bit more about the SDK, because I think there will be a lot of interest to extend the 3D visualization experience that we offer using the SDK. The SDK, as I mentioned before, very different from the API. The SDK, that's in full showcase SDK. In shorthand, we go by SDK, but just to be clear, that's a showcase SDK, which is programmatic layer that sits on top of our player so that you can create a new experience, extend the experience, and automate some of the workflow that you want your users who are using our 3D players to be able to do. So we are going to cover that a little bit in more detail than the API, because I believe, particularly in the AEC world, that's where a lot of the value is. Very quickly, you will see again, there is a slide with a reference guide for the SDK, but in order to authenticate, you need first to get an SDK key. And again, we have links for you to request your SDK key. Once you have the SDK key, you can start using the SDK on your site. And very much like our 3D player, the SDK can act. Basically, it sits on top of the 3D player. So anything, any model that you can render in the 3D player showcase, you can also use it with the SDK layer on top of showcase. Today, our 3D players can render any public model. So the SDK can also be applied to any of those public models that are rendered in the showcase SDK, in the showcase application. One thing to be aware of is that initially, I'm covering that in another slide, but initially Showcase is restricted to localhost, and you can do your whole development. You can show any public model in Showcase, and again, use the SDK to do the programming that you want. If you want to post the same experience on a public page on your site, you just need to contact us so that we will enable the domain that you want to use this on, so that we can enable your SDK key to also work on whatever domain you want to use your code on. Let's see. Yeah, something I would like to call out, which is a big difference between API and SDK. When I talked about API, I mentioned that any changes you are doing using the API directly affect permanently the data in our data stores, because again, that's a direct connections to our data stores. If you write, for example, if you change the name of a model, it's in the data store, that's it. There is no turning back. You can keep changing it, but I mean, that's permanent changes. The SDK is different because again, because the SDK is a layer on top of Showcase, the SDK lives on that web page where it is being implemented. The changes that you implement with the SDK are transient. They only live for, on that page during that session. in a minute, I'm going to talk a little bit how you can use both the SDK and API if you want to persist some of the changes that are done using the SDK, and there are some use cases for that. I'm going to mention a few. Now, the big advantage of the SDK is that first, there is no data, for the most part, going back and forth between our servers and your page, because again, the SDK lives on that page that you control. Another thing is that because you can program the SDK experience to be, and it is by default session-based, you can totally create a different experience or slightly different experiences for different users who are visiting the same space on that same page. Because again, you control the sessions and you control what experience the user is going to have using the SDK when they're visiting that space, and it can be different for different users. For example, depending on the state of a user or depending on the language that a certain user wants to use, you can customize the experience using the SDK. Now, what can you do with the SDK? So this is a little bit dry because here this slide talks about the capabilities. But when you combine them, of course, that's where you can create an experience that is amazing. So let me go quickly through that, and then I would like to spend more time on a few examples that will spark interest, I think. So with the SDK, you can control the movement of the users, the movement and the location of the user in a model. So that's the camera movement in the model. And we have SDK calls or functions that basically move the camera in the model to specific locations. So for example, if you have external signals, links, whatever is happening on your larger applications and you want based on that to move the user in the 3D model to a specific locations, that's supported by the SDK. We have bidirectional control. So the SDK provides a lot of data about what's happening with the users in the model. So if the user moves to a different location, that's all being exposed via the SDK as events. And so again, with your programming, you can listen to those events and you can decide to do something based on those events. For example, if you know that the user is in a specific locations based on those events, you may want on your page to have certain information that will pop up. You can read some data. So again, you can know a lot of information about where the user is. And also the SDK exposes some data about specific information that we have in the model, like sweep data, matter tag, or yes, the position. Very quickly, expose those rendering data. You can manage the matter tags. So again, for people who are not very familiar with it, matter tags is the name of our labels that can be put in space. Typically, what would happen is that photographer or customers would scan a place, let's say a property, a factory, a certain place, would be uploaded to our system, our servers. Our servers will create the 3D model, and then it becomes available. And then the fun can start, and customers may want to customize and to add additional informations in the model itself. What typically would happen is that the customer would come to our site, matterport.com, and go to what we call a workshop, which is our 3D editor. Once the customer is in workshop, customer can do a lot of things like adding labels, creating a tour, and taking pictures inside the space. But one of the functionalities is to add those matter tags, which have a anchor and then some content in a bubble. And the customer can add a lot of those matter tags. Traditionally, as I just said, those matter tags are being added in our 3D editor workshop on our site. Now, those matter tags are very powerful, and what we did in the past few months is to enable complete management of the matter tag via the SDK as well. So using the SDK, you can now create matter tags wherever you want. You can also control a lot of aspects of those. Here I'm mentioning a few, like create, update, delete, but you can move them. You can even change the target, which by default is a colored disk, but you can change that with your own images. You can control the opacity, so you can even make some matter tags disappear or being more or less visible. And so this is really something that is super powerful. The API can also control matter tag, but you get the idea. With the SDK, it's temporary, transient on your page for that session. With the API, it would be a permanent matter tag that would be created. And last but not least, using the SDK, you can also insert 3D objects. And so 3D objects, I'm going to show a few examples, but inserting 3D objects is super powerful because you can think of that for a variety of use cases. In the real estate industry, that would be typically used for virtual staging, but in many other industries, it can be used to insert an IoT device. It can be used to do facility management. And for example, a large piece of equipment, you could insert it and see how it's going to fit within, let's say, a factory or a specific space. So that's really opening a lot of new use cases. That's something that we launched a few months ago. I'm going to skip that one. It's more for your reference if you are interested in understanding how to do, again, 3D model, 3D object insertions that relies on what we have on the right side, which is called the SDK bundle, which is a more advanced version of our SDK, I would say. The embed version on the left also can do a lot of things already, which is a little more basics. You can go into the details later. You can reach out to us to cover that in more details if there is interest. And I'm going to show a few examples because I think that's what will spark imagination the best. And you will have access to these decks. There are links at the bottom for you to play with these examples. I just would like to show you a few screenshots for now in the interest of time. So first, we have an example that gives a lot of information. We call it kitchen sink, but it gives a lot of information at the bottom of the screens about everything that is being exposed via the SDK and those controls that, again, all use the SDK to act on. And so that's a good example to really learn and get a better sense of what the SDK, how the SDK works and what can be done with it. It's more to experiment and experience a little bit about the SDK functionalities that we put the examples together. Another one that is from a partner here, so I just want to share this, is, and many customers do this kind of experiments, of experience, I would say, using the SDK, is what is referred to as a mini-map. So that's not something we offer as a third party, but again, using the SDK, it's pretty easy to put an overlay that in this case would represent part of a floor plan for the property. And again, using the SDK, because the SDK exposes the position of the camera or user within the space itself, it's relatively easy to be able to pinpoint where the user is on the floor plans and even the orientations. Again, everything is exposed via the SDK. So that's an experience which, again, bring a lot of clarity in terms of how users are using the space. So something to think about if it applies to your space. Another example here from another partner is using overlays. So overlays, that's not really part of the SDK. An overlay, you can always, of course, program an overlay the way you want on top of an iframe. So go for it. The point I'm trying to make with this example here from one of our partners is that, again, because the SDK exposes a lot of information about what's going on in the 3D tour, you can grab that information and you can use that information to trigger some experience. And a lot of the experience, that's the point here, doesn't need to be super complicated. It can just be based on overlays. And some of our partners are doing that based on the location you are in the tour. Some of our partners are popping up some music, some text, some overlays to provide more information about that position in the tour. And that's something that is simple, yet quite powerful. This one, I'm not going to play it now, but again, it's just to express that because we expose information, locations in the tour, and because we can, it's a two-way feed, meaning that you can also use the SDK to move the users to a specific locations. You could use that to do do what we call virtual open house, but essentially, or remote control, essentially is to control the experience for a bunch of visitors of that same space from one host. And so typically, I'm not going to play it here, but typically the host would control the experience, would move into the tours and would be the host. Using the SDK, we would read where the host is in the tour. We would broadcast essentially that positions to the visitors of the same space or same models and be able to move the visitors to the same location where the host is, because again, the SDK is providing all of that plumbing. There is additional work, of course, that would be needed. The SDK only provides informations and functions to do these kind of experiences. There is programming that is needed to make it happen end to end. But I just want to illustrate one of the powerful use cases that can be done using the SDK. I have just 2 or 3 more. Here, an example of that is used to train people actually on different aspects of a property. Here, the screenshot is about real estate property, but I think more interesting, you can think of it as a facility management or maybe a factory where again, using the SDK and controlling the content of these matter tags, these are the matter tags, it's possible to know where the user is. It's possible to display information like questions or training information in those bubbles. It can also be outside of our 3D players because, again, you have that connection, that information, and you can reflect a lot of information that is happening on the page outside of Showcase into Showcase. For example, in this example, and you have links to play it. In these examples, we control the color of the matter tags to reflect the correctness of the answers. It can be used for training or for quizzing a trainee in a different piece of equipment. Virtual staging, again, super popular in the real estate industry, but same thing in the facility management or other industries. As soon as you want to insert other 3D objects within one of the Matterport model, super powerful, something that is supported by the SDK. Same idea, here we are inserting another 3D object. It happened to be a Nest thermostat, but the idea is to illustrate IoT readings. So you could insert IoT devices and or by, again, programming and capturing the real-time reading of an IoT device, you could essentially insert the display of the value within the scene. So here we are just showing an example with temperature, but it can be any type of IoT device. If you think of some construction sites or maybe facility management where there are a lot of IoT devices, that's something that would be super powerful because once you insert those devices and you connect, again, that's development, but once you connect the IoT feed to the virtual IoT device that you place in the scene, you could imagine that you are in your office in Manhattan and you can walk in a factory that is, let's say, in Kansas. You can see all of those readings, all of those IoT devices that show the reading in real time, super powerful. Same idea, security devices. Here we wanted to illustrate, you could put, in this case, again, it's a 3D object insertion. It happens to be a security camera, and using programming, we are exposing or showing what the field of view of this camera would be. Again, you get the idea. So the very powerful, and that opens new use cases and new industry that potentially would be interested in working with Matterport models to be able to do, in this case, but again, ideas are limitless, but in this case, it could be pre-sales for security devices or post-sales support. For example, if I want to have the right security devices in my house, then again, from anywhere, I could potentially visit my house, my virtual house, a Matterport model, and see all of the security devices that have been installed and get their reading in real time, including video. So that's something that can be done as well to insert live stream videos. You have the link. In this case, I think we were live streaming CNN in TV, a virtual television in our model. But again, I was talking about security devices a minute ago. We could live stream security camera so that, again, from your office, you can check all of the readings of your security cameras and see where they are, what they are seeing, what is a live stream. So super powerful. A couple of limitations, and I'm checking time. So in the last few minutes, a couple of limitations that I would like to highlight. It's not really limitations, but something to be aware of. I already covered that. SDK data is not stored in the Matterport data stores. It's transients. It lives for that current sessions on your web page where you implemented the SDK code. And it works only today, I would say, on public model. It's not an SDK limitation. It's our 3D player showcase only can render public models. And so the SDK that sits on top of Showcase, the 3D player, only affects 3D models as well. And to finish, I just would like to highlight something that is interesting when you consider both the SDK and the API. And for some of the use cases, we found that our customers like to use both. So, for example, and just to spark again interest, with the API, it's possible to find a model ID. Some of our customers implemented that so that they know when a new model is ready and they can just grab the ID and embed it on their site. That's done with the API. And then with the SDK, they can enhance the experience for that model that is now embedded on their site. Automatically, they can enhance the experience as we just seen. They can also, using the API, support the creation of matter tag and automate the creations, or let the user, again, in the showcase experience, the 3D experience, be able to add additional nodes that would become matter tags using the SDK, like taking notes. Now, as I said, SDK data created with the SDK is transients, but using the API now, we are back to the API. Once those matter tags have been created using the SDK in the scene, it's possible to have, let's say, a button, validate, commit, and to push those same matter tags to be permanent matter tags for the models. And this would be done using the API. So the point I'm trying to make here is that many use cases are just API use cases or SDK use cases that we saw before. There are also some use cases that benefit from using both at the same time to achieve different steps of an end-to-end use case. Onboarding. So now that hopefully you are excited, you understand the power that you can get by using our API or SDK. How do you get there? At the very end, I will let Ethan talk a little bit about how to get started as part of the hackathon, but I just wanted to provide some pointers. So again, that's one slide, you will have access to it, pointers on how to get access to the SDK or the API. So follow those links and you will get, will help you get started with SDK and API. In terms of getting started, yes. Ethan, do you want to talk about the next steps here?
Yeah, so pretty simple to get started and start building out any sort of application on the platform. All you need to do is create a free account. So go to our website, buy.matterport.com, create a free Matterport account with your email that you want to use, and then shoot me an email or a Slack message in the AEC Hackathon Slack at egoldspiel@matterport.com, or find me in Slack. And then what we'll do is convert your account to the correct account type. And please make sure you also, when you contact me, let me know what type of application you're looking to develop and what type of developer tools you think you're going to need, be it access to the APIs, the SDK that Dom mentioned, or any of the SDK bundles. Feel free to include that in your message, and then we'll get you set up. Should be able to do it pretty quickly.
Thank you, Ethan. And just to last, you will see last slide, you will have contact information for both Guillermo and myself. This is pretty real time. I just copied pasted those pictures. So that's us. And don't hesitate to contact us. Again, as Ethan was saying, we are going to keep an eye on the Slack channel, but otherwise you have our contact information.